Why, hello there, everyone. I said that I would read you Robert Jordan's A Memory of Light, the last book in his series, The Wheel of Time. And by gum, today I'm here to start the first segment. Now, this kind of goes without saying, but obviously I'm not going to be able to read an entire chapter in one segment. It would take way too long, and I'm pretty sure YouTube don't, okay, YouTube has some pretty crazy long videos, like those 10-hour videos that everyone, oh man, I, spent up all night watching this 10-hour video of, I don't know, we're taking the hobbits to Heisenberg, or something like that. But, well, I'll try to read as much as I can in one segment, but I don't want to make them too terribly long because, after a while, you're just like, alright, get on with it, that kind of thing. Which, speaking of which, we'll get on with reading the story right now. Alright, so this is going to be exciting. I've never really done anything like this before. And, hey, we'll see if people like it, then, hey, that's fine with me. Alright, now I'll try to read as, as slow as I can. Try to pronounce all the names as best as I can. But, hey, like I said, I'm not the expert at pronouncing these names. Hey, I'm doing my best. In case, without any further ado, here we go. Robert Jordan's Memory of Light. Oh, of course, and also credit goes to Brandon Sanderson for actually writing it, because if you do not know this, Mr. Jordan has been deceased since 2007. But in any case, like I was saying, here we go. Prologue by Grace and Banners Fallen. Bayrd pressed the coin between his thumb and forefinger. It was thoroughly unnerving to feel the metal squish. He removed his thumb. The hard copper now clearly bore its print, reflecting the uncertain torchlight. He felt chilled, as if he'd spent an entire night in a cellar. His stomach growled. Again. The north wind picked up, making torches sputter. Bayrd sat with his back to a large rock near the center of the war camp. Hungry men muttered as they warmed their hands around fire pits. The rations had spoiled long ago. Other soldiers nearby began laying all their metal, swords, armor, clasps, mail, on the ground, like linen to be dried. Perhaps they hoped that when the sun rose, it would change the material back to normal. Bayrd rolled the once coin into a ball between his fingers. Light preserve us, he thought. Light. He dropped the ball to the grass, then reached over and picked up the stones he'd been working with. I want to know what happened here, Karam, Lord Jarid snapped. Jarid and his advisors stood nearby in front of a table just draped with maps. I want to know how they drew so close, and I want that bloody dart for an Aes Sedai Queen's head. Jarid pounded his fist down the table. Once his eyes hadn't displayed such a crazed fervor. The pressure of it all, the lost rations, the strange things in the nights, were changing him. Behind Jarid, the command tent lay in a heap. Jarid's hair, grown long during their exile, blew free, face bathed in ragged torchlight. Bits of dead grass still clung to his coat from when he'd crawled out of the tent. Baffled servants picked at the iron tent spikes, which, like all metal in the camp, had become soft to the touch. The tent's mounting rings had stretched and snapped like warm wax. The night smelled wrong, of staleness, of rooms that hadn't been entered in years. The air of a forest clearing should not smell like ancient dust. Baird's stomach growled again. Light, but he would have liked to have had something to eat. He set his attention on his work, slapping one of his stones down against the other. He held the stones his old papal taught him as a boy. The feeling of stone striking stone helped push away the hunger and coldness. At least something was still solid in this world. Lord Jarid glanced at him, scowling. Bayrd was one of 10 men Jarid had insisted to guard him this night. I will have Elaine's head, Karam, Jarid said, turning back to his captains. This unnatural night is the work of her witches. Her head? Ares' skeptical voice came from the side. And how precisely is someone going to bring you her head? Lord Jarid turned, as did the others around the torchlit table. Ares stared at the sky, On his shoulder he wore the mark of the golden bowl, charging before a red spear. It was the mark of Lord Jared's personal guard, but Aery's voice bore little respect. "What's he going to use to cut that head free, Jarid? His teeth?" The camp stilled the horribly insubordinate line. Bayrd stopped his stones, hesitating. Yes, there had been talk about how unhinged Lord Jarid had become. But this? Jarid sputtered, face growing red with rage. "You dare use such a tone with me, one of my own guards?" Aery continued inspecting the little cloud-filled sky. "You're docked 2 months' pay," Jarid snapped, while his voice trembled. "Stripped of rank and put on latrine duty until further notice. If you speak back to me again, I'll cut out your tongue." Bayrd shivered in the cold wind. Aery's the best they had and what was left of the rebel army. The other guards shuffled, looking down. Aery looked towards the Lord and smiled. He didn't say a word, but somehow he didn't have to. Cut out his tongue? Every scrap of metal in the camp had gone soft as lard. Jared's own knife lay on the table, twisted and warped. It had stretched thin as he pulled it from his sheath. Jared's coat flapped open. It had silver buttons. "Jarid," Karam said, "a young lord of a minor house loyal to Serand. He had a lean face and large lips. Do you really think, really think, this is the work of Aes Sedai? All of the metal in the camp?" "Of course," Jarid barked. "What else would it be? Don't tell me you believe these campfire tales. The last battle? Pah!" He looked back to the table. Unrolled there, with pebbles wearing the corners, was a map of Andor. Bayrd looked back to his stones. Snap, snap, snap. Slate and granite. It had taken work to find suitable sections of each, but Pappo had taught Bayrd to recognize all kinds of stone. The old man had put up a trade when Baird's father had gone off and become a butcher in the city, instead of keeping to the family trade. Soft, smooth slate. Bumpy, rigid granite. Yes, some things in the world were still solid. Some few things. These days you couldn't rely on much. Once immovable lords were now soft as metal. The sky churned with blackness, and brave men Bayrd had long looked up to, trembled and whimpered in the night. "I'm worried, Jarid," Davies said. An older man, Lord Davies was as close as anyone was to being Jared's confidant. "We haven't seen anyone in days. Not farmer, not queen soldier. Something's happening. Something's wrong." "She cleared the people out," Jarid snarled. "She's preparing to pounce." "I think she's ignoring us, Jarid," Karam said, looking at the sky. Clouds still churned there. It seemed like months had Bayrd to see a clear sky. "Why would she bother? Our men are starving. The food continues to spoil. The signs—" "She's trying to squeeze us," Jarid said, eyes wide with fervor. "This is the work of the Aes Sedai." Stillness came suddenly to the camp. Silence save for Baird's stones. He'd never felt right as a butcher, but he'd found a home in his lord's guard. Cutting up cows or cutting up men? The two were strikingly similar. It bothered him how easily he shifted from one to the other. Snap, snap, snap. Aery turned. Jarid eyed the guard suspiciously, as if ready to scream out harsher punishment. He wasn't always as bad, was he? Bayrd thought. He wanted the throne for his wife, but what lord wouldn't? It was hard to look past the name. Baird's family had followed the Serand family with reverence for generations. Aery strode away from the command post. "Where do you think you're going?" Jarid howled. Aery reached to his shoulder and ripped free the badge of the Serand house guard. He tossed it aside and left the torchlight, heading into the night towards the winds from the north. Most men in the camp hadn't gone to sleep. They sat around fire pits, wanting to be near warmth and light. A few of clay pots tried boiling cuts of grass, leaves, or strips of leather as something, anything, to eat. They stood up to watch Aery go. "Deserter," Jarid spat. "After all we've been through, now he leaves, just because things are difficult." The men are starving, Jarid, Davies repeated. I'm aware. Thank you so much for telling me about the problems of every bloody breath you have. Jarid wiped his brow with his trembling palm and slammed it on his map. We'll strike one of the cities. There's no running for her, not now that she knows where we are. Whitebridge. We'll take it and resupply. Her ace today must be weakened into the stunt they pulled tonight, otherwise she'd have attacked. Bayrd squinted into the darkness. Other men were standing, lifting quarterstaffs or cudgels. Some went without weapons. They gathered sleeping rolls, hoisted packs of clothing to their shoulders. Then they began to trail the camp, their passage silent, like the movement of ghosts. No rattling of chainmail or buckles on armor. The metal was all gone, as if the soul had been stripped from it. Elaine doesn't dare move against us in strength, Jarid said, perhaps convincing himself. There must be strife in Camelin. All those mercenaries who reported Shiv, riots maybe. Elaine will be working against Elaine, of course. Whitebridge, yes, Whitebridge will be perfect. We hold it, you see, and cut the nation in half. We recruit there. Press the men in Western Andor to be recruited. Go to, what's the place called? The Two Rivers. We should find able hands there. Jarid sniffed. I hear they haven't seen a lord for decades. Give me 4 months and I'll have an army to be reckoned with. Enough that she won't dare strike at us with her witches. Bayrd held his stone up to the torchlight. The trick to creating a good spearhead was to start outward and work your way in. He'd drawn the proper shape with chalk on the slate, then had worked towards the center to finish the shape. From there you turned from hitting to tapping, shaving off smaller bits. He'd finished one side earlier. This second half was almost done. He could almost hear his papa whispering to him. We're of the stone, Bayrd. No matter what your father says. Deep down, we're of the stone. More soldiers left the camp. Strange how few of them spoke. Jarid finally noticed. He stood up straight and grabbed one of the torches, holding it high. What are they doing? Hunting? He's seen no game in weeks. Setting snares, perhaps? Nobody replied. Maybe they've seen something, Jarid muttered. Or maybe they think they have. I'll stand no more talk of spirits or other foolery. The witches are creating apparitions to unnerve us. That's what it has to be. Rustling came from nearby. Karam was digging in his fallen tent. He came up with a small bundle. Karam? Jarid said. Karam glanced at Lord Jarid, then lowered his eyes and began to tie a coin pouch at his waist. He stopped and laughed, then emptied it. The gold coins inside had melted into a single lump, like pig's ears in a jar. Karam pocketed this lump. He fished in the pouch and brought out a ring. The blood-red gemstone at the center was still good. Probably won't be enough to buy an apple these days, he muttered. I demand to know what you are doing, Jarid snarled. Is this your doing? He waved towards the departing soldiers. You're staging a mutiny. Is that it? This isn't my doing, Karam said, looking ashamed. And it's not really yours either. I'm sorry. Karam walked away from the torchlight. Bayrd found himself surprised. Lord Karam and Lord Jarid had been friends from childhood. Lord Davies went next, running after Karam. Was he going to try to hold the younger man back? No. He fell in the step beside Karam. They vanished into the darkness. I'll have you hunted down for this, Jarid yelled out to them, voice shrill, frantic. I will be counted to the Queen. No man will give you, nor any of your houses, shelter or succor for 10 generations. Bayrd looked down at the stone in his hand. Only one step left, the smoothing. A good spearhead needed smoothing to be dangerous. He brought out another piece of granite he picked up for the purpose and carefully began scraping along the edge of the slate. Seems I remember this better than I expected, he thought as Lord Jarid continued to rant. There was something powerful about crafting this spearhead. The simple act seemed to push back the gloom. There had been a shadow on Bayrd and the rest of the camp lately, as if he couldn't stand in the light, no matter how he tried. He woke each morning feeling as if someone he loved had died the night before. It could crush you, that despair. With the act of creating something, anything, fought back. That was one way to challenge him. The one none of them spoke of. The one that they all knew was behind it, no matter what Lord Jarid said. Bayrd stood up. He'd want to do more smoothing later, but the spearhead actually looked good. He raised his wooden spear shaft. The metal blade had fallen free when evil had struck the camp, and latched the new spearhead in place, just as his papa had taught him all those years ago. The other guards were looking at him. "We'll need more of those," Morier said, "if you're willing." Bayrd nodded. "On our way out, we can stop by the hillside where I found the slate." Jarid finally stopped yelling, his eyes wide in the torchlight. "No, you are my personal guard. You will not defy me." Jarid jumped for Bayrd, murder in his eyes, but Morier and Rose caught the Lord from behind. Rose looked aghast at his own mutinous act. He didn't let go, though. Bayrd fished a few things out from beside his bedroll. After that, he nodded to the others, and they joined him. 8 men of Lord Jarid's personal guard, dragging the sputtering Lord himself through the remnants of camp. They passed smoldering fires and fallen tents, abandoned by men who were trailing out into the darkness in greater numbers now, heading north, into the wind. At the edge of camp, Bayrd selected a nice stout tree. He waved to the others, and they took the rope he'd fetched and tied Lord Jarid to the tree. The man sputtered until Morier gagged him with a handkerchief. Bayrd stepped in close. He tucked a water skin into the crook of Jarid's arm. "Don't struggle too much, or you'll drop that, my lord. You should be able to push the gag off. It doesn't look too tight. And angle the water skin up to drink. Here, I'll take out the cork." Jarid stared thunder at Bayrd. "It's not about you, my lord," Bayrd said. "You always treated my family well. But here, we can't have you following along and making life difficult. That's just something that we need to do, and you're stopping everyone from doing it. Maybe someone should have said something earlier. Well, that's done. Sometimes you let the meat hang too long, and the entire haunch has to go." He nodded to the others, who ran off to gather bedrolls. He pointed Rossley towards the slate outcropping nearby and told him what to look for in good spearhead stone. Bayrd turned back to the struggling Lord Jarid. "This isn't witches, my lord. This isn't Elaine. Well, I suppose I should call her the Queen. Funny, thinking of a pretty young thing like that as the Queen. I'd rather have bounced her on my knee at an end than bow to her. But Ondar will need a ruler to follow to the last battle, and it isn't your wife. I'm sorry." Jarid sagged in his bonds, the anger seeming to bleed from him. He was weeping now. Odd thing to see that. "I'll tell people we pass, if we pass any, where you are," Bayrd promised, "and that you probably have some jewels on you. They might come to you. They might." He hesitated. You shouldn't have stood in the way. Everyone seems to know what is coming but you. The dragon is reborn. Old bonds are broken. Old oaths done away with. And I'll be hanged before I let Andor march to the last battle without me. Bayrd left, walking to the knight, raising his new spear into his shoulder. "I have an oath older than the one to your family anyways. An oath that the dragon himself couldn't undo. It was an oath to the land. The stones were in his blood, and his blood in the stones of this Andor." Bayrd gathered the others, and they left for the north. Behind them in the night, their lord whimpered, alone, as the ghosts began to move through camp.